It's truly a pleasure to stand before you today at what promised to be an inspiring, energising and forward-looking day. Wimena was founded with a clear and bold vision to change, to accelerate women's participation in leadership in sport across the MENA region and beyond. Since our first event, Wimena has visited Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Bahrain and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we intend to visit further MENA countries in the coming year. Through sport, we aim to empower women, dismantle cultural and institutional barriers, and create platforms where girls and women can thrive. From grassroots participation to positions of global leadership, we believe that sport not only is a driver for health and community, it is a powerful engine, economic growth and force for women's empowerment. Since we last gathered here a year ago, where we challenged perceptions and sparked vital conversation, these milestones would not have been... Women has grown into a global movement. This year, we proudly hosted 2 landmark events in Saudi Arabia, taking an international delegation with us. One alongside Formula E, celebrating women in motorsport, another in Riyadh, highlighting the powerful sporting journeys of women in the kingdom. These milestones would not have been possible without the incredible support of our partners. I'd like to send our deepest thanks to our platinum partner, Saudi Aramco, as well as our sponsors, Neom, Portus, Wasserman, AIE, Saudi and Eyeball. I've got the shapes, can you see? We're also grateful for our many supporting organisations whose commitment to our shared vision makes today and every day of this journey possible. Today is a reflection of sporting excellence, of trailblazers who are breaking new ground, and a testament to the truth that when we work together, we are stronger. Women is not just an initiative, it is a growing, unstoppable movement, and together we continue to change perceptions, build connections, and create meaningful and lasting change. We are especially proud of the work in Saudi Arabia, where we are honoured to have the support of the Saudi Ministry of Sport, whose dedication to advancements of sport for all is truly inspiring. This morning, I am delighted to share with you a video address from Her Excellency Adwa AlArifi, Assistant Minister of Sport Affairs. Adwa sends her apologies for not being able to join us in person, but she shares this message with us all today. Adwa is not only the Assistant Minister, but also a board member of the Saudi Olympic and Paralympic Committee. She oversees numerous national initiatives and flagship international events. She has plays a leading role in promoting sport and healthy living across the kingdom. A true pioneer of women's football, Adwa co-founded Saudi Arabia's Women's Football Club in 2007 and launched the Riyadh Women's League. She became the first female board member of the Saudi Football Federation, where she established women's football department. She has also played a central role in securing international events for the kingdom, including the FIFA World Cup 2034, the AFC Asian Cup 2027 and the Asian Games 2034. Please join me in welcoming this message from a visionary leader and a champion of women in sport, Adwa AlArifi.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry I cannot be with you in person today, but I wanted to share a message of support and encouragement from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the start of this important and inspiring event. Firstly, I'd like to thank and congratulate Tara and Laura and the team at Wimena in all their efforts behind this movement and the staging of their 3rd event. I was so pleased that the Kingdom was able to welcome Wimena in February of this year. It gave the opportunity for so many women in sport to see the transformation and progress in our country for themselves, many of whom came for the first time and have already said they will return. There are remarkable things happening in our country and across the region that need to be seen with your own eyes. In Saudi Arabia, thanks to His Majesty King Salman and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, growth and progress is everywhere. And today, as a woman in sport, I am proud to say that we have become one of the fastest and most exciting stories in world sport, especially for women. And every door is open. With the unconditional support of the Minister of Sport, His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki Al Faisal. Sport is truly for all. In female sport, our grassroots are flourishing, pathways are being built, and new champions crowned. But simply, we have more girls and women playing more sports than ever before. With female participation only 2% behind men, after a 400% increase, we have close to 40 national teams across 25 sports, over 100 female board members, and 7 female sports federation presidents. Importantly, we have also guaranteed that our female and male national athletes are paid the same and use the same quality of facilities. Much has been achieved and fast, but the future is even more exciting as firm foundations have been built. And this is why Wimena is important. There are opportunities to grasp and challenges to overcome, many of which exist in women's sport across the entire world. But sports unites us and is our universal language, which is why we need to come together, to connect, to grow, to get to know each other better, the result of which will only ever be a win for all. Looking ahead, over the next decade, we will host a series of major events and will welcome the world. We will be in the headlines for our growth, but I ask you to see that more than building stadiums or facilities, we are building a sporting nation where dreams are coming true for so many of our girls and women. For us, sport is a race with no finish line, and it is a journey that you are all invited to join us on. Thank you and enjoy your day ahead.
I now have the pleasure of welcoming Karen Webb Moss onto the stage. Karen has over 3 decades in global sports business, a career that includes working on 11 Olympic Games, multiple FIFA World Cups, Paralympic and Commonwealth Games, leading several successful bids. She was one of the first senior women at the IOC and one of the first CEOs of a sports organisation in the Middle East. Karen, luckily, is now back in the UK and chair of the British Swimming Aquatics GB and also chair of the Female Motorsport Initiative More Than Equal, and also runs her own advisory business. Karen.
Thank you, Tara. And on behalf of all of us, I'm sure we'd just like to applaud Tara and Laura, who started this Wimena, I think 3-4 years ago, from scratch. So it's really amazing to see you with partners and a room full. Tara, we all get nervous. I am. But what I've found, given that I recently spoke to a room full of Premier League Academy leaders, 500 in the room, 1 woman who was running the production and 3 people of colour, and it was like speaking to a graveyard. So I know when a room is mostly dominated by supportive sisters, you know, give us a break. Okay, women's sport is undergoing a game-changing transformation, capturing unprecedented attention and recognition. Globally, we've seen a 275% increase in media coverage over the past 5 years, with revenues increasing by 300% in just 4 years. Since 2002, we've seen a vital commercial growth of 54%, and women's sport is expected to generate over $2.35 billion this year. Audience of female sports are booming. Here in the UK, women's sport achieved its most watched year ever in 2004, an impressive 44.7 million viewers, surpassing a previous record in 22 of 37.6 million. And these don't include the global tournaments such as the FIFA World Cup, which in 2023 was the most viewed women's sport event in history, with a global audience of nearly 2 billion viewers. As we all know, good and bad, social media conversations around women's sport has rocketed. 7 out of 10 people who watch sport say that they now watch women's sport. And as we're here in the home of Chelsea, Chelsea Women's TikTok account amassed 167 million viewers. And over in the States, women's basketball will air this time, prime time, for a third consecutive year. And off the field of play, we've seen some improvement in the number of women across sports administrations. At my old place of work, the International Olympic Committee elected on May 20th the first female president, Kirsty Coventry, who takes up her post officially in July. And the IOC membership has, over the last few years, grown to 41% of females, which is 100% more than it was in 2013. In Paris at the Olympic and Paralympic Games, 35 female commentators were hired by the Olympic Broadcasting Service, raising the percentage of female commentators to nearly 40%. And since Rio 2016 Games, that's a rise of over 200%. And when we think about pay, which is improving, in 1973, tennis led the way, with thanks mostly to Billie Jean King, where equal prize money was paid to women. And across 4 major tennis tournaments, they now offer this. And there are many countries and many other sports now committing to equal pay. Brands are finally investing in long overlooked female talent. Our daughters are now growing up seeing packed stadiums for women's football and increasingly, and I was in Twickenham recently, for women's rugby and many other sports. So it seems that sport is finally becoming more representative of society and more aligned to the reality that we live in. So, with all that, surely we don't need any more women in sport panels or women in sport conferences, because it all sounds fabulous, doesn't it? However, let's look at our big, wide world and consider something I've recently come across before I talk a bit more about sport. Women are 51% of the population, but 70% of the poorest in our society. 83% of single parents, doing 66% of the work, producing 50% of the food, but earn just 11% of the pay, and own just 1 to 2% of the land. For sport, despite the very welcome progress I've touched on earlier, girls, have we got some issues. Here we're in 2025 and we're still struggling with gender stereotypes, pay disparity. In last year's Forbes 100 top paid athletes, not one woman. There's lack of opportunity in funding, underrepresentation in leadership. So while I mentioned the progress made at the IOC, out of about 50 to 60 international federations, there are still only 3 female presidents. We have safety and transport issues, a history of active exclusion and banning, and women and girls, unfortunately, experience more violence, online abuse, and sexual abuse across sport. And girls are still dropping out of sport by the age of 14 at twice the rate of boys. So, as we think about a vision for women's sport, isn't it just this? That no one of any cultural society, economic background, or of any ethnic group, or of whatever ability should be excluded. Simply, women and girls need access to sport. We should all have the opportunity to find the joy, the pride in effort, the physical and mental benefits, the feeling of winning or losing, but wanting to go back again and win, the confidence-boosting resilience, the sheer delight and fulfillment of playing, of competing, of teamwork, of the personal, community and societal health and well-being that comes with sport. I think all of us sitting here want a world of sport where we recognise and embrace diversity, where we celebrate our varied experiences of women and girls in sport, respecting perspectives, valuing our insights, learning from each other, sharing and inspiring. And we can start this right here today, as we have done with the previous Wimena conferences. My career has taken me around the world, living and working in Australia, China, Japan, Europe, Brazil, and then to Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, and Saudi. If I think about the vision for women's sport today, surely there is no greater and more inspiring example of progress, transformation, and growth than what's happening right now in the Middle East. And this all starts with a vision. Nearly every nation in the Gulf that I've worked in has laid down its own national vision, an overarching, guiding, and ambitious strategy for an advanced, sustainable society. Often with health and education, the third core pillar, or the first, is sport. Imagine for us living over here, being able to set out a long-term vision and framework decades before, being able to steer that and to ensure that all private and public sectors are aligned with this. No government changes every 4 years, no U-turns in policy to impede or disrupt, just sheer progress following a vision. Through my 8.5 years living in Qatar and the 3+ years working across the GCC, I've been invited in to advise, to mentor, or to lead projects, but I have always left, having learnt far more, left humbled, impressed, and inspired. And I might suggest that what's going on in these countries now could almost be a blueprint for how it could be and should be. What I love, which is very obvious to them, to those of you in the Middle East, and particularly now in Saudi, is the connections between sport and health, sport and placemaking, sport and nation branding, sport and reputation, sport and resilience, and so on. We all know the stereotypical thinking of the Middle East, and we're so guilty of that in the West. Even for me, living there, I got tired of going, yes, I can drive. No, I don't have to be covered from head to toe. Yes, I can go to dinner with men and women together. And yes, I'm able to work and sponsor my husband. Can you imagine how that often went down? There is such a misconception about life for women and girls, and we're constantly reminded of the lack of education, awareness, and the lack of real facts. All I think we in this room can see is opportunity. In preparing for today, I've been catching up with some of the wonderful women and men who were involved with leading equality of girls and women in sport and in the region. Bahrain enabled girls and women to play sport in the 70s, where volleyball and basketball were available to be played, but only in private schools. One of the many amazing women who are game changers in the Gulf is Bahrain's Sheikha Hussa Al Khalifa. As a schoolgirl, she played football as she went to a private school, and upon graduating high school, she couldn't see a path for that to continue. So still in her school uniform, probably helped because of the family she belonged to, she got to meet the then General Organisation of Youth of Sport. They did express some concerns, surprise about how many girls wanted to play football, and some initial reluctance. But coincidentally, as the then FIFA president, Sepp Blatter, was visiting, bringing with him his new slogan, "The future of football is feminine," Bahrain agreed to set up a test football match in the national stadium with 2 of the schoolgirl teams. Since then, play has not stopped, and football with other sports are played in all schools now. While thinking about and discussing the vision for change with Hussa, I'm struck by Sheikha Hussa's reflection, one of her reflections, on what is key then and still is key now, the partnership of what she calls the 2 forces for progress, the government and, importantly, the family, and that any initiative which respects both can and will progress. Sheikha Hussa has gone on to lead Bahrain's growth of women and girls sport and is an active member of the GCC Women's Sport Council. I've also learnt so much from working with Her Royal Highness Princess Dalal, former advisor to the President of the Saudi Arabian Olympic Committee, Deputy Director and then CEO of the Saudi Games. Like Sheikha Hussa and another woman who is a footballer, and another woman I really greatly admire who's a little bit mad, Sheikha Azma Al Thani, Executive Director of the Qatar Olympic Committee, the first Qatari to ski the North Pole and to summit Everest. And recently, and the reason why I did ask her to come here today, she was attempting to climb what they call the 80,000 mountains without supplementary oxygen. Anyway, Princess Dalal is an equestrian athlete, and all 3 place the athlete, the girl and the woman, and their respect for their families and their faith at the heart of all efforts. With the kingdom hosting several mega global events, the Saudi Games was initiated to grow the kingdom's domestic sport capacity and capability, and in doing so, develop a nation of athletes capable of competing in Olympic, Paralympic and other sports. The Saudi Games' 3rd edition, held at the end of 24, had 52 sports with 9,000 athletes. 50 of those were female and mixed competitions, 7 para sports. It's created over 300 new jobs and the first real volunteer workforce of over 350, and contributed 642,000 SAR to the sports economy in Saudi. What I especially love about working on the Saudi Games is the concept of open trials in sport for men and women, girls and boys, right across the kingdom and across 7 cities. Last year, 300,000 people registered to give a sport a go. That's where hopefully our future champions come from. I could talk forever about these efforts and these women, but I would like to humbly offer some personal reflections from what I've learned and seen, and more importantly, from listening to those in the region who want to get this so right. As I mentioned, there is a GCC Women's Sport Council, and it's already sharing regional sports and events calendars and supporting regional competitions like the new GCC Women's Games. It's crucial for this body to strengthen its work and for all the nations across the GCC to work together on programmes. With the rapid transformation across the sports sector, with hosting of mega events and construction of venues, one thing that is a common discussion, it begs the question, is there a risk that grassroots sport may fall down the priority list? There are also some shared concerns that for the real growth of female sport in the region, we need not to forget the need for talent identification, for more post-school leagues and sporting clubs, for better training facilities and coaches, for support of female athletes who maybe want to stay in their home countries, go to university but still compete in their sport, for more investment to help women move onto the elite levels of sport. The new ecosystem is certainly shedding light on talent, but it needs to ensure that there is a proper pathway. And something else which I've learned, which would certainly help with global awareness, understanding, and potential brand and investor interest, are the concerns around female sporting media content. There is very sparse content with very few images, and I believe we have Jackie here from Getty who can certainly attest to that. In the need to respect tradition, faith and family and align this for active sport participation for girls and women, we need to strengthen the narrative around the benefits of sport to girls and women in building character for positive life lessons and strong values, and as how sport is a positive influence on a strong female education, career and employability. This latter thing is something that many of my friends and colleagues talk about. So we need to share our stories, share the facts and stats, proving that throughout our lives, sport plays a powerful role. I'm sure I speak for all of us in the room when I say that we are so in awe of what's happening in the region and look to you not only to achieve your own goals and ambition for transformation, but to set the standards for sport at every level for girls and women. And the opportunity for all of us in the room is first to listen, to respect, understand, and where required or invited, offer our wholehearted support. I'd like to end by quoting someone who has really touched and amazed me. I recently had the honour of being a judge at the Sports Book Awards, and the winner of the women's writing category, and ended up the overall winner, was an Afghan footballer, refugee and women's rights activist, I'm sure you've seen her, called Khalida Popal. I hope these words are relevant for all of us, whether we play or work in sport. And this is from her book I implore you to read, called My Beautiful Sisters. I've seen what happens when women and girls are given the chance to play. There is a time when you are part of a team, when you're losing, when you feel like you just can't give anymore, when you're dead on your feet, but you look around at your team and you see in their eyes that they're not done yet, that you aren't finished, and you take strength from that and realise that you're not done either. We will never stop being a nuisance. We will never stop poking and prodding. We will never stop asking for the rights which should be ours. We will never stop calling out hypocrisy where we see it. We will never stop asking, why not us? We will never stop running and kicking, shouting and playing, because there's a ball and there is you. But what really matters is you, your team, and all of our sisters. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to speak a little bit more, but I have the pleasure now to bring the progress more to life by giving us the really brilliant opportunity to meet 2 Saudi Arabian athletes. I'm very excited. Both of these women are firsts to achieve representation for their country and their region in their sport. One from a sport that I'm actively involved in, motorsport, which has not seen a woman on F1 for nearly 50 years. And the other is the Kingdom's first female professional skier. While they join me on stage, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about them. Farah, Sharifa. Okay. Farah is a racing driver who went from leisure and rental karting at the weekends to single-seaters in under a year. She won the 2022 Female Karting Saudi Championships. She continued and then gained national recognition and international attention by earning a wild card entry to the F1 Academy this year in Jeddah during the F1 Saudi Grand Prix. As a student, she moved to the UK to further her studies, get this, in aerospace engineering. Farah, known for her systems-orientated and technical approach, is the first Saudi woman to reach this level in motorsport. She is also an advocate for neurodiversity and for creating more inclusive pathways into both STEM and motor racing. Sharifa, to my immediate left, is Saudi's first female skier. Born in Jeddah, she was educated in Switzerland and London and has a couple of degrees around art and art history. What started as a family pastime, holidaying in the Alps, soon became a personal passion, and she entered the sport professionally, and much later than most, carving out her own place in alpine skiing. In a sport long dominated by Western athletes, she has competed in several International Ski Federation races across 3 seasons, and she has recently debuted for the Kingdom at the Asian Winter Games, which was held in China earlier this year. So let's have a chat with them. Okay. Okay. All right. Sharifa. You started skiing at the elite level pretty, not late in life, but compared to a lot of others, and going professional. Can you tell us, because it's quite an extraordinary journey, about your journey and about obviously representing the Kingdom in the recent Asian Winter Games?
That's a long story, so
yeah, good.
I'll try and get through it.
Good, I can drink the water.
So, yeah, I grew up holidaying or going on ski holidays with my family where I learned to ski, but that was, a week a year where we'd do, your average recreational skiing, meandering down the slope as slow as you can and stopping for as many hot chocolates as you can along the way. To fast forward, 15 years or so, and my country going through this incredible change, which is what inspired me to get into this sport professionally. That wasn't available for me growing up. And so about 5 or so years ago, Saudi Arabia began creating all these sports federations, and one of which was the Snow Sport Federation. And I just had this light bulb moment, well, I want to do that. And so I reached out and I thought, you know what? I never want to look back and say, I wish I did. And I started competing for Saudi. So that was 3 years of lots of trial and error. Getting beaten by 20-something-year-old girls. I was in my 30s when I got into this sport, which was not easy physically. It's a very demanding sport. And you mentioned the Asian Winter Games. So that was held this past year in February. And I have to give a little bit of context about that because just 2 months prior to that, I had a terrible accident where I broke my arm and needed a very big procedure. And I just thought, you know what, after all this, all of what I've gone through, I was starting to see it all fade away. And I really wanted to be there for Saudi Arabia's first participation in the Asian Winter Games. So I put my heart and soul into recovery and rehabilitation and healing. And I mentioned some of the healing modalities. I mean, I lived in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber for weeks. Someone would call me up and say, camel milk.
That's why she looks so beautiful. She's really 64.
Roughly. So yes, somehow I managed to get through that really dark moment, and I made it to China. I stood there at the start gate, and I just thought, you know what, you made it this far, just try your best. Yeah, it was an incredible honor.
And what's it mean for you representing the kingdom, and what's been the reaction?
I mean, the reaction from back home has been extremely overwhelming. I get messages from people from all ages. So the parents reach out and ask, how can their kids get into skiing? What is skiing? Is it an all-year thing? I get messages from kids asking me where they can start, where they can train. But I also get messages from people who had never seen snow in their life, asking me where they should go on their ski holiday. So I thought, if all else fails, I could do that on the side and just, give advice for where people should go skiing.
That's brilliant. And while I've got you, I understand you're a mother of two, a boy and a girl. And as someone, as I've read, you've said that sport is more than a test of talent. It's an expression of resilience and purpose. So I'm sure that your own children, they're 6 and 9?
6 and 4.
6 and 4, that you're already inspiring them, and many others who may be thinking about a future of being, in winter sport at possibly the Winter Olympic Games, which Saudi will host. Can you give us a sense of maybe how we all in the room, or what needs to be done to help these young girls that want to follow your footsteps or still support you?
I think for a sport to be successful in a country, you need your role models. And I didn't have that growing up. Okay, I'd look at Lindsey Vonn or Roger Federer or LeBron James or whoever it was. But I think, for kids back home, it's important to see someone they can relate to. And of course, with something like this, with what we're working on in Saudi, there's a lot to be done at grassroots level. And so we see a lot happening with the infrastructure being built around that, with facilities. There needs to be a lot more facilities being built. Athlete development programs, I'd love to see a lot of that, because that's really needed, to show an athlete what it's like from where they just get a spark and they want to get into something, to taking them to the elite level of performance. So there's a lot of and in between, obviously.
Sharifa. Farah, I'm going to lead into this by mentioning our own research at More Than Equal, where it was, having joined More Than Equal 2.5 years ago, we knew that to be taken seriously in motorsport, we needed to focus on the data and find out the reality for girls and women in motorsport. So it gave us an understanding of the many cultural, financial, bias in the car design, physical and other barriers, and some rotten stereotypes in motorsport. As a woman who started competing young in sort of more leisure karting, and you've worked your way up pretty quickly, I'd say, from karting to single-seater to competing with F1 Academy, how do you find the world of motorsport?
Thank you for that question, Karen. As if trying to open that water bottle wasn't embarrassing enough. If my voice shakes, that's excitement and not much of nervousness. I am very thankful to be sharing the stage with you, Karen, and with you, Sharifa, and I'm very honored and privileged to be standing before you sharing my story. So honestly, growing up with having 2 brothers and my siblings, motorsport or cars was the way that I connected with my brothers. And the next thing that popped on my Google search was a disused karting track in Riyadh. When I went there and I tried karting, luckily for me, sadly for my brothers, I beat them so badly, they never showed up again. But I was just having fun and enjoying the family that sports built with the other drivers that I found on the track. And then moving to the United Kingdom and pursuing my degree in aerospace engineering and expanding my experience and getting a little bit deeper, and the next step in the ladder of motorsport has definitely been stressful. I remember coming back in the pits in my very first F4 experience, crying because I was so scared. Because while everyone starts at a 4-year-old or 8 years old, I started karting when I was 15, very late, and then I started 3 months ago in single-seaters, jumped straight in a competition, no testing, no training prior to that, and I saw everyone just flying past me like bees. And I came back to the pits, I was crying, my mental coach, my driver coach, came to me and gave me a tissue, and he said, "You can't drive with tears in your eyes, so wipe them and go back in." And that's exactly what I did. So I will try again opening that water bottle.
Resilience. And, you know, I'm not from motorsport, and going into it, I've been quite surprised. It is changing, but it's a very male-dominated environment. As a woman, what do you think are the specific issues about motorsport that could be addressed that would help women get to, as is our joint ambition, to get a woman on the F1 grid?
Yes, I think that's very important to mention, that it's a self-doubt kind of a thing. It's an inner thought that it's sometimes used against us. But once we put the helmet on, everyone just wants to win. No one really cares if that's a female or a male or anyone. No one has time to think about whether that's a female or a male driver. I want to win as bad as they do, and they want to beat me as bad as I want to beat them. But the challenges that arises are definitely physical challenges that I personally struggled with. It's something absolutely different to go against gravity and the forces that we experience with high speeds, racing cars and driving cars around circuits. And training takes a little bit longer for us to build muscles comparing to men. So it's just a little bit more, it's not restricting, but it's a motivational thing that we need to work a little bit harder to perform as good as anyone else can. And mental toughness is also something very important, and it's a huge challenge, and unfortunately, nothing prepares anyone for the mental challenge. You can only train that muscle, that mind muscle, once you experience that mental challenge. And it's hard because you don't have time to actually take a break and to take a breath and to drink a cup of water or take a sip of it. The moment and the second you lose going and dwelling about bad thoughts is maybe an accident or a crash that you face on circuit. So.
I mean, to give some context, and we often have people doubt and be very cynical that a woman can get to F1, but there's a couple of stats which shows how badass this one is that we estimate the population of girls karting to be only about 4% of the total global driving community, so that it's very little. So to find that one is going to take a lot. And then we're putting them on a female-specific driver development program. But we've sent 74 women to space. As an aerospace engineer, you'll appreciate that. And there are, in the UK and US alone, nearly 2,000 combat-trained fighter pilots that are women. And one of them that I spoke to, when she first started flying a fighter jet, she had a cushion strapped around her. And the G-forces of obviously a jet are far more than that of obviously the cars that you're driving. We know from the data there are girls in the Middle East karting. What's it going to take to have more? Can we see a future Saudi or Arabic woman get on that grid?
Firstly, I'll tell my engineers to put a cushion for me. I hope that helps. Yeah, that's a good one. But to see progress, I mean, this is something I struggled with. I really had to progress and to make mistakes on the fast lane and under media attention and under the spotlight. I think it's very important that we remind ourselves that we didn't have the time frame other leagues and other athletes had in developing that winning mentality and that winning capability in performance. So what we really need to focus on is supplying or increasing the supplies to meet the demands. We need to give a fair opportunity for everyone that wants to participate to play. We have a great attention. We have a great great, incredible story, but we need more competitions for these new generations. We might be struggling now because we're building this concept and we're going through all of the mistakes under the spotlight, but it's for the next generation that we're doing this for, inshallah.
Oh, that's perfect, inshallah indeed. Okay, this is a quick fire round for both of you. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia. The transformation, we don't need to repeat, is just phenomenal. Sport is a vital pillar for the future growth and development of the country, and obviously vital for women and girls. How do you both feel about what's going on in your home country and about this phenomenal progress?
I mean, proud is an understatement. For me, to witness the shift from where we were barely speaking, sport was not part of the conversation, to it now being a national priority, as something I could never have imagined growing up. Yeah, this is our moment. This is our moment as Saudi Arabians.
Beautiful, Farah.
That's amazing. As Sharifa has said, it's being proud isn't enough in describing that. It's given us the opportunity, and me the opportunity to be here sharing the struggles. Perhaps it can raise more appreciation of everything that's being done. But I'm extremely excited for what's coming next. Extremely proud and extremely happy.
Okay, I know that time is tight, so I'll fast forward a few questions. How does the future then look for girls and women for sport in Saudi Arabia?
Given, inshallah, that we conquer the challenges in media exposure, in funding, and in collaborating with big and international brands, as everyone needs, including myself. But given that we conquer and overcome these challenges, we look at a very bright future. We share a global problem in empowering women in sports, and we look at opportunity. I believe that sometimes it takes a person to do it in order for others to believe and in order for others to pursue their dreams. So we're going in the right direction, inshallah.
Brilliant. Sharifa, anything to add to that?
I don't have much to add to that.
So go on.
Actually, sorry, thank you. Actually, having excuse me. Being a parent, I think that's a very important thing, because we both had the privilege of having supportive parents, and that's something I believe very important. So how would you support your kids to actually, do you think that would make a difference in being supportive?
So, it's easy for them now. They can dream it and do it. So my son will 1 week be into fencing, and there's a fencing club in Jeddah for him to go to. The next week, both my kids are into capoeira, and that's available. I think the future is bright for them.
So last question to your kids or to all of the young girls, and I've looked at your Instas, you've got a huge following. What do you say and what do you advise young girls in Saudi to do?
I would say, this is your moment, this is our moment. Just whatever it is, go for it. Don't wait for the path to be handed to you. Don't wait for the path to be paved for you. It certainly wasn't for me. I think it's a unique moment for us where the path is being created as we go. But it's there for you. The opportunities are there. The support will be there. So it's a time that you can go for your big dreams.
That's incredible. I would also say I would give them same advice, but with also preparing them for the challenges. It's very important to dream big, but it leaves everyone in a vulnerable place, in being shattered when they see these obstacles and these challenges. So I would advise to go into sports, because it really builds character, and that only happens because discipline is challenged and resilience is challenged, and it's very important to prepare for the worst in order to see the best.
Okay, I think because we need to move on to the next panel, can I just ask you to thank these more fabulous women and... I know we all wish you continued sporting success and that you continue to be the most eloquent, intelligent, wonderful, fabulous women that will really are great role models for the kingdom.
We'll
and
make
thank
sure of
you,
it.
Jen. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
We're now going to move on to the next panel, and this will be chaired by Dame Tracey Crouch. With over 2 decades of experience in government, Tracey brings a wealth of knowledge and political acumen as the now Managing Director of Sport at Hanover Communications. She was appointed Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Sport, Tourism and Heritage in 2015, and she was Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Sport and Civil Society from June 2017 to November 2018. She was elected as the Conservative MP for Chatham and Aylesford back in 2010. Tracey left politics last year, joining Hanover to lead the sports practice and to support what is an established team of global experts in sports storytelling, fan engagement, and strategic communications and issues management. And where is she? And on a personal note, I have to thank this lady because I was trying to renew my British passport, loads of problems. We're on this amazing Sports Collective WhatsApp, and I asked, is anyone out there, know anyone in the Home Office? Tracey gave me some advice. The next day I got my passport. She's the girl to know. But while Tracey and her panel are coming up on stage to discuss the path to sporting success and how we empower excellence in order to do that, as a suitable and rather nice and relevant link from me to them, I'm really chuffed. I invited David Coulthard, who is the founder of More Than Equal, to come today. He's really sorry he can't, but I'm pleased that I managed to pin him down. He's one of the busiest people on and off the track I know. He's a colleague of mine. Well, actually, he's the inspirational founder of More Than Equal. Former driver in F1, David Coulthard, has a message for you. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is David Coulthard. I'm speaking to you here from the Formula One paddock. I'm a former Grand Prix driver, saying a big hello to all of you involved in this Women in Sport conference. I would have loved to have been there in person, but the Formula One season sees me travel all around the world. Now, I'd just like to talk briefly about my passion for supporting women in sport, women in motorsport particularly. And if I take you back to the beginning of my journey, I grew up in a very small village in the southwest of Scotland, and we were a farming region. I was more likely to end up milking the cattle than ever being a Grand Prix driver. But with a supportive family, I was set on a journey through karting, into cars, and then further support from many of the great former champions in motor racing. That led to me becoming a Grand Prix driver. In my shadow was 6 years my junior, Lindsay, my younger sister, who also started karting. And it's fair to say she was more naturally talented than I was. She took to it like a duck to water. Success came very quickly in her journey. But the key number I gave you there was the 6-year age gap. So when I moved into cars at 17, you can do the math, she was 11. When I got my first chance to drive a Formula One car at 19, you can do the math. So the momentum was building towards the dream of becoming a Grand Prix driver actually becoming the reality. And of course, the family, including my sister, were getting ever more supportive and ever more excited about that possibility. So when I did get the opportunity to become test driver for the Williams team in Formula One, and then that ultimately led to me being a Grand Prix driver, the focus went off Lindsay. She didn't get the same level of support, and I then fulfilled my dream. So what I realized in that moment, and have been really doing everything I can since then, is that if you nurture talent, if you support talent, then they have the chance to realize their dream. And Lindsay wasn't given that same opportunity because, as I've already mentioned, my journey. So if we fast forward to when I retired from Formula One, there was an opportunity to be involved in the first women-only racing series, which was called W Series. We were able to launch that, unfortunately, into COVID, so not the best time, but we got 1 year of racing on the Grand Prix support series before COVID took over, and then sadly that championship ran its course. F1 Academy was born out of the ashes of that, and during that same time when F1 Academy was being formed, I was part of founding More Than Equal. And More Than Equal's goal is to use data to help and support and identify young female talent and to bring them on their journey towards Formula One. Excuse the noise in the background, this is a working paddock, hopefully you can still hear me. But more than equal, we are absolutely focused on using the data and the science that's available in the modern world to give that young talent, that young female talent, the Max Verstappen treatment, the Lewis Hamilton treatment. So we've partnered with Manchester Met Uni, we've partnered with the FIA, we're now a partner of F1 Academy, which is running on the undercard to the Grand Prix weekends. And we absolutely know and believe that in the coming years we will have a top-line Formula One driver that has come through either the academy or through the support system of More Than Equal. There is no reason why women cannot compete at the highest level in motorsport against men. This is not like other sports where it's about physicality. This is a hand-eye decision-making sport. And in my lifetime, we will see a woman win a Grand Prix. And the ultimate goal of More Than Equal is to deliver the first female Formula One world champion. Anyway, I know you've got much to talk about there on the ground. It's been a pleasure to have this brief opportunity to share a little bit my passion for supporting women in motorsport and women in sport. Have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Can I just say thank you for such an inspiring open from Karen in particular. Amazing. I've always been a bit of a fangirl, to be honest with you, Karen, so I was delighted to be able to help you with your passport issue. And also, the Assistant Sports Minister, I mean, I thought she gave an incredibly powerful address. I was very lucky as Sports Minister to visit Saudi Arabia. And I went with those stereotypical views, and I have to say they were smashed to smithereens by Princess Rima, who was my counterpart at the time, and very much sort of kind of that focus of health and well-being and the connection with sport was front and centre of mind, and we were able to help with the kingdom sort of kind of develop its own vision around that, and I've always thought that they've been a lot more advanced in terms of their thinking about sport and its connection and its importance than we have, where we talk about things in a very siloed manner here in the UK. And also Farah and Sharifa, what incredible, role models you are, smashing that glass ceiling right in front of us. And talking of glass ceilings, Karen said something really interesting, and I'm sure we'll pick it up in the panel in a moment, about Bahrain and the football story in Bahrain. Karen, did you say that was in the 70s? So what I find really interesting about that, going back to the point that you made about stereotypical views, is I was born in the mid-70s, grew up playing football, or rather wanting to play football in the 80s, and wasn't allowed to, and was stopped at school from playing football in the playground because I was a girl. And yet here in Bahrain there was, girls playing football at school, and it's only recently that we've started to see a bit of a breakthrough in the number of girls playing football in schools in England. In fact, there are still schools across this country where girls still don't have access to football. And so, I'm delighted to be here chairing this panel where we can talk about all the great things that are happening across the region, and perhaps maybe we should be looking a bit enviously at this, a bit more with admiration. Right, so I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. So grab a microphone, team, while I get my own script up. Nasser, why don't you start?
Sure. Good morning. First of all, thank you to Wimena, the organizers, for inviting us to join this very important panel. My name is Nasser Al-Khouri. I'm the Executive Director of Generation Amazing Foundation. For those that don't know, Generation Amazing Foundation is the Human and Social Legacy Foundation of the FIFA World Cup, Qatar 2022. We started at a very early stage in 2010, looking at legacy, specifically human and social legacy programs. So we started kind of building football pitches for marginalized communities around the region, in Lebanon, Syria at that time, and Jordan for refugee populations. And since then we've expanded to 70 countries. We've impacted 1 million lives of young boys and girls globally. And so I think this is sort of, in a nutshell, Generation Amazing. And I believe that we have a short video as well.
Football has the power to inspire people. My name is Umesh Rathod. I live in Mumbai, Maharashtra, and a slum called Ambedkar Nagar. I'm working very hard so I can leave the slum in future and want to come back and help my community.
What began with a dream is now a reality. What started with a legacy vision has become not only a goal reached, but a movement of its own. In 2010, when Qatar was awarded the right to host the World Cup, to all. In times of humanitarian crisis, Generation Amazing through its programs and global reach help rebuild displaced communities, revitalize their human spirit, and provide structured support to young people and their families. Generation Amazing and all it does is because of you. The power is now with you to make the change you want to see in the world, because you are Generation Amazing and you are 1 in a million.
Brilliant. Thank you for that video. That was very inspiring, so it's good to see. Yvonne, over to you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and your organisation.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Laura and Tara, for having me again. I had the privilege of being out in Riyadh earlier this year to speak at the conference, and it was amazing. I met some fantastic people, and thank you to the ladies earlier for their panel. I thought it was really interesting to hear your experiences. I'm the CEO of Women in Football. We're a global organisation, a membership organisation. Cheap plug, it's free to join. And actually we support and champion gender equality for women working across the football industry, both men's and women's football, from grassroots to the professional game. And I'm sure I'll share a little bit more with you as we go through the panel.
Fantastic, thank you. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm the Chief Brand Officer for the Women's Tennis Association. I am on the venture side of the business, so if you don't know, about 2 years ago, the WTA split its commercial arm off into WTA Ventures. So I sit on that side of the business. I oversee everything that is essentially fan-facing, so brand and creative, tour and tournament marketing, player marketing, and all of our content. Today, I'll be talking a little bit more about some of the tour side of the business and how we support our athletes on sort of the tennis side of Sporting Co. You may or may not know we're in the second year of a 3-year deal to host our crown jewel season-ending event, the WTA Finals in Riyadh. And we have been actually in the Middle East for a number of years with tournaments in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha for decades now. So it's a real privilege to be here to talk about some of that work.
Thank you. And although last, most definitely not least, Faisal, do you want to introduce yourself and your organisation?
Thanks, Wimena, Laura, and Tara for inviting us. I am Fahmida Faiza. I am representing the FIA. I think with all of that being said by Karen and the amazing panel in the morning, and also an inspiring word from David, it goes without saying what FIA is doing and stands for, but just for the sake of it, we have 245 member clubs across 149 countries, and we are the governing body around motorsport and mobility. My role as a social impact manager has started very recently, and personally, it's compelling for me to join, and I could relate a lot with the first panel because you cannot be what you cannot see. I'm the first ever Bangladeshi to join in 121 years of the history of the organization, which gives a lot of hope to the South Asian women coming to motorsport. Not many people would dream about that. So I think, led by my personal vision and inspiration, I found myself very strategically well aligned with the organization and the leadership that is aiming to double the participation in motorsport. And today's panel, we would be sharing more about what FIA is doing and how important it is to bring our girls and women engaged in motorsport on and off the track. Thank you.
So I'm going to try and make this as conversational as possible and leave time for questions from the audience as well to make it interactive. But we're going to start with quite a big topic to kick off. We've already touched a little bit on it in terms of Karen's dress and hearing from our two amazing athletes. And that is around who gets to play, lead, and be seen. I mean, I know that's the $64 million question, but how do we make sport truly inclusive? And Yvonne, maybe I can start with you from a football perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this touches on the point that you've just made. The first thing is you have got to see it to be it. And I think representation right across sport is so important. So that's on and off the field of play, that's in the boardrooms, that's in administration, it's in technical and support roles. You know, it's participation, it's everything. I think that's massively important. It's also in the media, you know, what we see on our screens, on our social content is really important, that balance of both men's and women's sport. So that would be a first point for me. And there's a lot we do at Women in Football around that, particularly around that representation at senior level and the allyship that's required at that senior level as well from men to support and encourage and engage women and invite women's voices, diverse women's voices into those senior decision-making roles. I think the second thing for me is about equitable resource. I think that's so important. We've seen in places like the States, as an example, you know, with Title IX, that changed the game in terms of participation and at that base level. And I think what was interesting to me visiting Riyadh and listening to some of the women that are working there and also involved in sport is there isn't sort of the tradition that we have here in the UK, particularly with years and years of history of the sport has been established, and it's been established as a men's sport. So actually there's a different way to do things to ensure from the get-go that the resources going in at an equal proportion, which means, you know, both boys and girls, men and women can kind of participate and create those pathways. The policy governance piece is massive. You know, the decision makers, if we think of, for me, I've worked in sport over 20 years, and one of the biggest shifts I've seen in terms of that governance and representation at senior level was the introduction of the UK Code of Governance for sport, for publicly funded sports. You know, we can encourage people, we can nudge people, we can talk about best practice, we can create the business cases indeed for diversity within your boardrooms. But actually, the carrot and the stick is an important mover in terms of how those things work. And that fundamentally shifted the representation of females on boards of governing bodies receiving public funding. And I think in professional sport that operates differently. And there are opportunities around the football governance bill to really sort of drive more ED&I within the boardrooms. But if you've got people in decision-making roles in boardrooms and they are not diverse and there isn't diversity of thought, you're just not going to change the game for everyone. You'll only change it for a proportion of the people that they're potentially thinking about. So I think that's another thing. And I guess the final thing for me, I could talk for hours on this, but it is around, leaning into and standing up to the abuse that is faced by women and girls in particular, particularly people of colour, people from the LGBTQ plus community, actually leaning into some of this and ensuring that we tackle that online abuse and in person and safeguard the environments where particularly women and girls are playing and participating in sport, because if we create those safe environments and we challenge that people think it's okay to say certain things, it makes it feel and be more inclusive. So tackling abuse and not shying away from that is another thing that I think we need to do, both in a call it out, but also an educational perspective. A lot of the work we do at Women in Football is really driving around education. If you don't know it, you don't know. But I like to think when I've been in a room and I've talked to people about the experiences of women working in the football industry, by the time you leave and I've chucked you a few stats, you do know. And therefore there is no excuse to continue to behave in a certain way. So they would be a few things that I think would make a big difference in terms of how do we make it more inclusive.
Thank you. Now, Sarah, although not without challenge, tennis has been pretty far advanced in these issues. Is that fair? And would you say that despite that, there is still more to do?
There's always more to do. Absolutely, no question. We have the benefit of Billie Jean King and 50 years of a legacy that is really incredible to be able to stand on. I'm proud every day to be able to be at the forefront of a brand like that and sort of a history like Billie Jean King. That said, as I said earlier, I sit on the commercial side of the business, so we have the benefit of doing the media deals that you're talking about. I manage our social content, so I can certainly ensure that what we're putting out there is equal, if not better, that we are trying to ensure media deals that get our women out there, that we get the right coverage, that we get kind of all of the things so that you can see it. But the industry's bigger than the decisions that we can make. There's still tournament scheduling. There are still sponsorship deals. The media deals still have to come to us. So we can negotiate to the best of our ability. And we never, ever see ourselves in competition with the ATP. But it is still a combined sport that we are still fighting the fight that Billie Jean King started all of those years ago. So, there's sort of no question that there's still so much work to do. We're in a good time in women's sport, and it's really incredibly encouraging to see partners like Sky here really committing to women's sports coverage. In the US, ESPN, their WNBA deal is really, truly changing the game in the US, but there's always more work to do. And I will just take 1 second to speak kind of on the tour side of the business. We've had the benefit of sort of years to be able to build the kind of framework around how we support our athletes so that they are coming up in an inclusive and supported environment. And we spend quite a lot of time on performance health, on mental health, and on family planning. Some of those things I think are real sort of stabilizers for how women can come up and build a path that is going to create more inclusivity. The safeguarding piece that you talked about, I think we're going to touch on a little bit more later, because I do think that that kind of thing is so critical.
And Fazza, tell us a little bit, you said in your own opener about see it to be it. I know we're going to go into grassroots, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but in terms of your own view around inclusion and representation, do you want to give us a few moments of thoughts on that?
I think the personal story is one side of the inspiration that brings me here, and I'm extremely honored to be part of an organization which really believes in such progressive areas of work that's happening around, and for more women to be a part of it. For the FIA now, the focus is really on the regionalization of the sport, leaving no one behind and bringing everyone. And I think there is value in it. When we started the Women in Motorsport initiative through our commission's work, we have come a long way. We have flagship programs like Girls on Track, which we would be covering more in detail later. But we have seen that, as you have said, that there's always more to do. So when we were thinking that how can we provide more support to women, to female drivers, especially Farah, as you have mentioned, and that really touched us. that's exactly what we are driven through. So we have launched in last year in June the first ever Women in Motorsport mentoring program. And the mentoring program is open to women with or without automotive background. So anyone from any part of the world can apply to be part of this program. And on the first edition, we have seen over 400 pairs being being matched as mentor and mentee. And we see that on the second edition, which is going to be launched next month, it just gets bigger and better. That means there is more interest. There is a lot of not just interest, but also engagement that we could leverage. And these are the platforms, these are the opportunities which helps us to bring the collective vision forward, have the right stakeholders in place, because this is a marathon, and this is not a one person's job. This is something that we all have to collectively push forward, and there is so much to do, and we keep building on the great legacy and the heritage of motorsport of over 121 years, and we only can do it better and bigger.
Thank you. And Nasa, your video gave us a great introduction to Generation Amazing. Do you want to just sort of kind of briefly talk about what you're doing in terms of gender inclusion and representation?
Yeah, so I think, everything, inclusion is the center of, it's the core of the foundation. It's everything that we do is centered around inclusion. I think, we, in terms of, gender and kind of, girls' inclusion, we do this through four sort of pillars. The first is through our community safe spaces. So we call these Generation Amazing Community Clubs. So we work with specific communities to develop. It's basically a safe space. It's a center for the community. It's led by the community. So we empower sort of, the community members. A lot of them are sort of, girls in a lot of cases. And so, these become sort of hubs, for programming, for activities, for, using sports. And I think, generally, there's no better way to promote inclusion than through sports. And so, we create these spaces. We have a specific, for example, in Jordan, we have a specific community club that is an indoor facility, obviously for the, from a cultural sensitivity perspective. Girls in that community are not seen sort of, playing football outdoors. So we created sort of an indoor safe space for the girls specifically. We heard, recently that the girls now are allowing some of the boys to come in and play as well, which is amazing. But again, these are sort of, based on community needs, and we do sort of a deep dive to see the community needs. We've done a lot of work with Saudi Arabia, with Saudi Sports for All. Recently, we launched a partnership that looks at capacity building. We've trained, a lot of physical education teachers across schools in Saudi, across various communities. A lot of them were female physical education teachers as well. So I think, those are, the opportunities in terms of capacity building, providing safe spaces, again, for girls specifically. Also, another thing that we've done is the festivals. You might have seen some of that in the video, but the festivals also promote gender equality. Everything we do has to have an equal split in terms of boys and girls across all of our programming. And then also in terms of festivals specifically, we've done specific festivals that were women-only festivals. So during the Sydney World Cup in 2023, the FIFA Women's World Cup, we had 3 delegations of youth that joined, some of our partner NGOs that were, delivering the festival in Sydney. We had delegations from Qatar, Morocco, and Saudi as well. So I think, again, that's where we can, providing these opportunities, especially on the grassroots level. I know we're not talking about elite, but, providing these opportunities to a lot of young girls, empowers them to kind of be leaders in their communities and kind of using sports to kind of lead social change across the board.
Well, I've always said that I don't think there's a problem in the world that can't be solved by sport. So, or certainly have sport something in that program of resolution. But Nasser, I'm going to stick with you because actually we are going to start talking about from the grassroots to the elite. But first of all, I just want you to tell me a little bit more about training the coaches and the community leaders, because you work across many different countries, different cultures. So can you talk to me about how you scale up these programs to reflect the different cultures that you work in?
Yeah, so I think, over the last couple of years, also with, the pandemic, we realized that it's really hard to deliver sessions face-to-face in some of the communities. So we've transitioned online also to promote sort of inclusion and providing an open education resource. So we have a hub, it's on our website, but basically it's modules that we've created with some of our partners that look at, safeguarding. I know that's a big issue that was addressed already from a couple of the panelists, but again, safeguarding. We have a gender analysis module that looks specifically at doing a gender analysis in the community. So this is something that we offer to all of our communities that we work with, but also it's an open education resource, as I mentioned, so it's online, and it's available for anyone that wants to become a football for development coach or a sports for development coach can sort of download the resources. It's also very flexible, so in a lot of communities that, have connectivity issues, what we do is, all of these modules could be downloaded and kind of, submitted, whenever, they're very flexible for, communities that, also a lot of our volunteers and a lot of our community members are working more than one job. So it's basically, kind of like a part-time, training program that people can do sort of at their own time. But again, the idea is that we're providing access and sort of to kind of promote inclusivity across the board. And I think, again, everything we do, the role of women generally in all of our community clubs is very important because they ensure that, both the girls and boys are there for the trainings, for the programming. We also do a lot of work, for example, in Rwanda. One of the communities that we worked with told us that they wanted sort of an indoor space for the older women to be able to kind of, it's not sports related, but we supported them. They wanted an indoor facility to kind of do crafts, and that created sort of an income for them and for their families, and also sustained the whole, program because they were in charge of the facility as well. So there are amazing examples of, how, again, the role of, women empowerment in communities, especially on the grassroots level, promotes sustainability of the programs, not just for the girls, but for the whole community.
That's amazing, thank you. Farah, tell me about what the FIA, or tell us, should I say, about what the FIA is doing to help to create grassroots opportunities, which then help bring people towards professional careers.
I think what we have heard from the first panel was an enabling ecosystem. And that's very important for people to believe in you. First, when we reached out to the regional context of our motorsport, we have seen that there is no one-size-fits-all. There is always a different contextual approach, and that's where our clubs, or the ASNs, take a big role and the leadership in terms of implementing programs such as Girls on Track. But what is also valuable is to have the right partners and collaborators who believe the shared vision and aligns with the same idea that you are putting forward. So with Formula E, in partnership, we have reached over, just last year alone, we have reached over 2,500 girls across 27 different events in partnership with Formula E, implementing our Girls on Track program. Girls on Track program is quite a flagship, and many of you from here, UK, would know that some of the most accomplished drivers from karting to different aspects were involved with the Girls on Track program, and it only gets better. We have countries such as Brazil, countries such as Indonesia, who has done excellent implementation at the ground level, giving more girls that hope, that opportunity that we all seek for. But what at the leadership level, at the FIA, that I also see that I'm extremely privileged to work with inspiring women like Sarah Mariani, who is the director of SDNI, and Sophia, probably she's here. Sophia, if you're here, our director of communications. And we would also have our panelist, Erin Burke from United Against Online Abuse, who will be talking about the safe sport and online abuse and safeguarding later on. So together, when we work with such driven, like-minded, and highly ambitious women who want more women to claim that space and help them to enable that vision, together with the partners, with the stakeholders, it only gets better.
And Sarah, you're investing in coach training, code of conduct systems, and player development. What does a healthy pathway look like for rising athletes?
Yeah, it's at every stage, isn't it? Sort of, we think about it from when people are entering the sport at the first time they pick up a racket, all the way through kind of the elite level that we manage, sort of top to bottom. I think when you're talking about just getting into sport, that's where the relationship with the Ministry of Sport and the Saudi Tennis Federation is one that I think that we're really invested in as part of our finals. One thing that we heard from our players very, very clearly when we made the decision to go to Saudi Arabia for our finals was that we weren't just going to come and play. We were going to come and work for community development. And so part of that has been mentoring, it's been coach inclusion, it's been coach training, and with sort of last year being our first year, we have already through 30 different programs and program days in Riyadh touched, I think it's now over 33,000 students and young people in the region. That's something that we're incredibly proud of. We had 16 young women who were part of our Future Stars program who spent time with our grassroots ambassador, Judy Murray, who's gone to the region multiple times with us over the last year and is continuing this year. So we're trying to build community development programs and grassroots programs and coaching and mentoring programs so that no matter what happens if we continue to do our finals in Saudi Arabia or not, we're building sort of a legacy that will carry on past what we're doing when we're in the region. And that's something that we're working very, very closely with the Ministry of Sport and the Saudi Tennis Federation on to help them achieve their goals of having 1 million people in tennis by 2030. Then, as you kind of move up the ladder for people who have held a racket more than just in the last year, and they're starting to enter kind of our pathway to pro programs, we do sort of a huge amount kind of in that space. I think we've talked a little bit about, the safeguarding piece. One thing that I think is really interesting that I learned when I joined the WTA, anyone who gets a credential to any tour or tournament event across the WTA tour has to go through a safeguarding program. You have to do an online training course to understand what safe space is and what safe spaces at our tournament events look like to be able to gain a credential and to gain access to that space. And that's something that I think it's time consuming, it's difficult to manage, but it's something that we feel is incredibly important, particularly for our young women as they come up through the pathways. Another thing that I think you touched on, sort of social media and anti-bullying. We have a program we instituted last year called Threat Matrix, and it's something that actually works with our players and their social media platforms to help weed out sort of some of the most difficult and sort of disturbing messages to our players, in many cases before they even have to see them. But what it also does is literally works with local authorities to identify threats and to identify whether that is a sort of regional actual active threat or whether it's something that is sort of broader and more kind of in the broader bullying space. It is not a catch-all. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a program that we instituted last year because it's a space that we feel is so important for our athletes, particularly women. The abuse that they face is truly shocking and really eye-opening, and there is such an educational piece of work to be done around that as well. And then the last thing I want to mention when you're talking about this kind of healthy pathways, I touched on it very briefly, but it's about maternity and family planning. And for us to be able to have a healthy pathway, that means that as a female athlete, you should be able to choose when and how you want to have a family. And that shouldn't be an inhibitor to your ability to continue to excel at the highest levels of a sport. So in March, we launched the PIF WTA Maternity Fund. And it is probably one of the things I'm the most proud of that we've done, certainly in the time that I've been there. It's the most comprehensive maternity and family planning program for any individual sport. Our athletes are individual contractors, so it's really hard to create a maternity coverage program for someone like that. But funded through the PIF and through our partnership with them, it was something that we were able to institute. And it's something that our Players Council has been incredibly vocal that they want for many, many years. So to then be able to bring in a partner and be able to establish a program like that, it creates flexibility and support for our athletes to choose how they want to have families. And I think ultimately when you're talking about healthy pathways, that has to be part of the conversation, particularly for women.
It's an incredible story, and I think many sports can learn from what you are doing on that. Now, Yvonne, you and I were sat at the back together when the Assistant Minister of Sport's video was playing and sort of nudged each other like naughty schoolgirls when she referenced equal pay. And so it's a bit of a leading question, really, which is what can football do to ensure that there's better long-term career support, or what can the industry do to create better pathways? Maybe you might want to reference a story that's in the paper today about pay in football.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously huge disparities between women's and men's football, and the revenues that sit within both sort of sides of the game, and certainly the pay. I think I came into this role 3 years ago, and I think the average salary for women's professional player was around 8K. And in 3 years, it's gone up to about 27, I think. So there's progress. But when you compare that to the men's professional game, obviously it's very, very different. There was a story this morning around the increase in the bonus and an agreement of the bonus for the Lionesses, should they go on to win the Women's Euros, which obviously we're rooting for. And that's increased, I think, by about 18K a player, which is, positive. It's in the right steps, okay. What I would say is 5 years ago, the FA brought in, so the match play for England players was equal pay for both the men's and the women's England players, which I think is important. It's an important statement. However, despite that increase in the bonus structure, the pot that they're drawing from is so much smaller. I think the men's is like 10 times the amount. It's like 14 million or something. So there's a long way to go. I think from my experience working with and around the women's game, there's so much development to happen. We've obviously professionalised the two leagues in the WSL 1 and 2, and that's brilliant. Karen Carney did a review on the women's game and made a significant number of recommendations. And there is this, constant conflict around growing the game sustainably. So can women be paid the same as the male players at this moment in time? No, there isn't that money. So unless the men are giving up some of theirs, which is highly unlikely, and I understand that to a point, I guess. However, that's just not going to happen. So what we need to ensure is the right and sustainable levels of investment are coming into the women's game, and that players are treated fairly and have the ability to, as we've heard from people this morning, progress within their career pathway in a sustainable way, and a way that means they can focus purely on the football. We still have players in what is now WSL2 who have got part-time jobs, who are having to do other things because the money they earn from playing the game as a semi-pro or a pro is just nowhere near. And we've got players who have had professional careers alongside playing. You're going to give up being a lawyer to play on 20-odd grand a year? It's highly unlikely, and that's not just a football thing, actually. That's, netball is professionalising in its infrastructure, and I remember having a conversation as they were consulting on, the professional netball league, and, we're looking to pay players. I was like, brilliant, and when I was sort of asked about the amount, I was like, well, what are you thinking? And at the time, this may have moved on, but at the time, it's like, maybe 22, 27 grand. And I'm like, are you serious? We've got people in full-time roles doing amazing things, careers. As much as they love playing netball, they're not going to leave those. So there's a lot of work to do, but I don't think it's as easy as we should just pay everyone the same, because the money that's going into men's sport comparative to women's sport at the moment is not the same. So it can't work sustainably, but we need to ensure people are paid fairly, and we need to ensure the conversation stays alive, and where there are the opportunities to challenge the amounts and change the way things are done, the questions are asked and the right decisions are made. I think from a pathway point of view, you touched on it beautifully, both of you actually, in terms of the mentoring, and you talked about upskilling coaches. It's really important that we have role models in these different positions, and we make sure that mentoring is a key part of anything. At Women in Football, we have over 11,500 members. We provide a lot of training and development to support both women to feel confident, to have their voices heard, to be able to influence, to grow in themselves professionally, but also the organisations to ensure the environment and the cultures are right. And mentoring is a key part of that. So whether it's our player transition program that we do in partnership with LHH, which is about supporting current female players into their next career, they are provided with a mentor. The mentor is matched to the ambition that they have. If they want to go into media, we'll find that. If they want to become an entrepreneur and start their own business, we'll find someone with that background. If it's somebody that's not quite sure, like I'm mentoring one of the players at the moment, they sort of are working a bit in the grassroots side of things, but they're not sure they would like to be a CEO one day. So it's about matching people where they are and providing those pathways and ensuring that as women, we can absorb that in a way that's right for us. So, for example, a lot of the coach education programs are delivered by men in predominantly male groups. And, you know, there is some testing now around women just doing their own courses. Really important because it's just a different environment. You can ask some questions. You don't feel like you're necessarily going to be judged. And, you know, the elephant in the room, do all women support all women? No, right? So we have to just call that out as well. Equally, there are some fantastic men who are absolute advocates, rightly so, of women and the diversity of thought that we bring into organisations. So I think the pay is one thing. It's about creating the conditions for success. Pathways are a big part of that. You've got to be able to see that connectivity between, you know, playing at that level and then going into the talent centre and then getting on a world-class programme and all of that side of thing. That's massively important.
Thank you. So we're running out of time a bit, and I'm keen to get questions from the audience. So start thinking while I ask last few questions. Just going to quickly turn to mental health, which is finally getting the attention it deserves in sport. But there's still a gap, especially when it comes to gender-sensitive support and access in underserved communities. Now, Sarah, you've embedded on-site mental health support at every WTA event. How have the players responded, and what's next?
Yeah, it's part of our performance health team, which women's health is something that we have really prioritized. Again, I said before, I'm sort of the chief brand officer, which is much more on the commercial side. But when we were doing a rebrand when I started a couple of months ago, I spent a lot of time with our foundation and a lot of time with our performance health team. Because I think that what we do in those spaces really is something that is such a core part of the WTA brand and who we are and what we represent. And it can take a leadership position across kind of the female athlete space. We have, as part of our performance health team, mental health professionals on site at every Grand Slam 1,500, 250, and some of our 125 events. So that is every level of the tour and almost every tournament on site. In addition to that, we have 24/7 online support and telehealth, which is available to all of our athletes at any time. It's in multiple languages across multiple time zones, not every time zone and not every language, but we're getting there. We're continuing to try to invest in that. And I think, you know, you talked a little bit about it. We really heavily lean into women practitioners where possible. We really heavily lean into the kinds of performance health and mental health aspects that are going to be specific to women and to female athletes. We create these quiet rooms on site, and sometimes I have to say that I benefit from them myself. You can go in and sit in these quiet spaces that we make sure that we have, and we have a lovely woman on tour who manages all of those practitioners. It's something that I think I'm really proud of, and you asked how the players have reacted. It's part of our new member orientation program. We do financial health, we do performance and mental health with our players as soon as they reach a certain ranking, and it's something that I think continues to be an education. I think it's hard when you're on tour, the relentlessness of that, to be able to take a second out, to think, oh, maybe I should talk to somebody, and then to take the step of trying to figure out how to do that. So accessibility is the most important part, but the educational piece is sort of the second most important part. They might not even know it's there, even if they've been on tour for a couple of years. One of the key pieces, I think, on that is our player leadership. And so members of our player councils make sure that they sort of take on the responsibility of educating the newer and the younger players as they're coming up about what is available to them and continuing to kind of have those conversations. So it's a place we're continuing to invest in, and it's something that I think will I'm proud of our leadership position, but there's a long way to go, I would say.
Thank you. Now, Nasa, how do you approach mental health and actually general health and well-being in regions where it's still a taboo topic, especially among women and girls?
Yeah, so I think for us, we see sports as an excellent entry point. It's a non-verbal entry point as well. I think, you know, through play, we promote sort of healing and resilience, and, you know, we do a lot of work with refugee populations that have gone through trauma. For example, with the Afghans that were evacuated through Qatar, we set up a safe space and we did a lot of programming with them over a period of 9 months. We also have medical evacuees in Qatar right now from Gaza that we're, you know, doing a lot of support and psychosocial support through, again, football and basketball and other sports. So I think from that angle, I think, you know, sports provides an amazing sort of platform to address mental health and a lot of communities that, you know, again, as you mentioned, you know, mental health is a bit of a taboo topic, but also in other communities, even in Qatar and other places as well. You know, post-pandemic, we've realized that, you know, we've heard it from the youth directly, you know, mental health is a big issue globally as well. And this is why we've kind of worked with WHO as one of the partners and kind of the partnership that we had with the FIFA World Cup, with WHO, with our Ministry of Public Health. We developed the psychosocial module and training program that's been rolled out in Qatar, and we're looking at expanding that as well through the Healthy Cities initiative under the WHO umbrella. But again, this is something that is sort of new in terms of kind of, you know, the role of sports in addressing mental health, but I think there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things to kind of learn, and, you know, in terms of, again, using the transformative power of sports generally to kind of address this topic.
As Minister, I had the privilege of meeting the UAE Minister for Wellbeing and Happiness, and I always thought that was a much better title for Sports Minister. If I'm very briefly, and then we'll turn to partnerships, but obviously we've made great stride in women's football, and but how is the conversation about mental health and well-being helping the continued growth within the MENA region?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about women's sport, which is quite unique, is that there's such a willingness to share. Like, everyone wants to be the best that they can be, but there really is a sense of community. And I noticed that so much when I came into the football space. I've worked in sport my whole life, but the women's football community has just been absolutely insane. And I think events like this are really important to talk about, you know, what different organisations are doing, whether that's at the grassroots level, whether that's in the professional level, and share that expertise. There is some fantastic programs, opportunities, initiatives, but at the heart of that, and whichever region in the world you're in, is about ensuring that you listen to the players, to the athletes, and bring those voices forward. I think sometimes as well, you know, in using the power of the athletes, particularly female athletes online, you know, as a society, particularly here in the UK, the stats, you know, we are very interested in not only the athlete on the pitch, we are interested in everything that they're doing. And actually, we've seen some fantastic campaigns, you know, to support, if we think about even the colour of the shorts that athletes are wearing, or whether athletes are wearing shorts or skirts or this or that, like, it's just about being respectful and ensuring that we're moving the conversation on. And at the heart of that is the athlete, rather than we've done this for 100 years, so it has to still just be this thing. And I think sport can open up conversations in different places that perhaps those conversations didn't used to happen. But now we talk a lot more about period health, about menstrual health, about family planning, all of these types of things across sport, and it gives people a platform where perhaps in some instances people wouldn't talk about those things. So I think we can use that really wisely. But never lose sight of the fact that the athlete needs to be at the centre of that, because it's about their needs. And sometimes we make assumptions that this is what people need, and actually we just need to ask the question a little bit more.
100%. Now, nothing happens in isolation. We always require coalitions between governments, sports, communities and the private sector. So, Faiza, the FIA has multi-sectoral collaborations across road safety, logistics, etc. How does the FIA ensure success in multilateral partnerships like these?
Well, Tracey, as you have mentioned at the beginning of this panel, that there is no problem in the world sport cannot solve. And I think that's where the power of partnership that really relates to us. We have the United Nations and the other partners on and off the industries on board, and I'm not gonna share like very fine details around that. But what I earlier shared, that our partnership with Formula E has seen 2,500 girls across 27 events just last year alone. That success of the partnership has led us to further our collaboration and partnership and engagement with the World Rally Championship and World Endurance Championship and Formula SAE. And it only gets growing. Now, what happens when these kind of opportunities emerge? Because there is one area that we need to look during the events, and what happens after the events is also equally important for us, because the legacy is as powerful as the events themselves. And that's where we focus a lot on what happens. And I think More Than Equal had an exciting research done that how much of the fans engage. And the women fans are expanding in numbers. And it's not just the numbers for us. It's about people who take genuine passion and interest. And our job at the FIA is connect motorsport to the community. And when we talk about community, community starts from here. This room full of people, you all here gathered very early in the morning because you care about what is happening around sport and the social impact of sport and how these engagements can have a trickling down effect at every level of the society. And that's exactly what we push at the FIA. So I think without going to say that the lasting impact is important for us and the legacy is important for us as much as the events. Our events are rolling and spanning across the continents through the meaningful partnership. But what we also look forward is to have the meaningful engagement and partnership after the event so that the legacy can help the communities to build their workforce. And I would just finish with one last example. During the FIA General Assembly Week in Kigali, Rwanda, we have trained over 100 local workforce on hospitality management, bringing the top-notch hospitality professional from Switzerland. And even though the event has finished, those people who were trained have now better employability, better capacity building exercise, which they can implement in their future opportunities of international mega sporting events or international engagements. And I think that's exactly what matters for us, that moving with everyone together and leaving no one behind and not doing the work in isolation. Over to you, Tracey.
Tracey, can I just add something to that? So I think it's a really interesting point, and one thing that I've definitely seen, and the research backs this up, is that the partnerships that exist in women's sport really matter to the fans of women's sport. So when we think about, public, private, voluntary sector partnerships, choosing the partners that are in it for the long haul, choosing the partners that care about the purpose, that are willing to invest not only in the shiny, bright, new trophy thing over here, but are actually willing to invest in the infrastructure and the skills and the long-term gain for the sport is so important, because where that goes wrong, we see the fans of women's sport kind of come out and emerge. But we also see from a brand perspective, the loyalty of fans and the propensity to buy, like the commercial opportunities for women's sport, and for people thinking, well, do I invest, or do I put a bit more in the men's side, or do I invest in the women's side? The commercial opportunity of bringing new fans into a sport is massive as well. So I just thought it was worth kind of flagging that.
No, it's perfect, and enables me to say a huge thank you to all the partners of this event today, the brands of which have been going backwards and forwards on the slides behind. I think without your support, events like this wouldn't happen, so it's much appreciated, I know. Right, over to you guys. Has anyone got a question for this incredibly interesting, diverse panel? Yes. I don't know if we've got a roaming mic, so if not, good one. Ooh, round of applause.
drawbacks with, thank you, the drawbacks with that. So I'm just wondering, my question is to Pfizer, whether you've got any sort of advice on securing long-lasting partnerships or sort of how you go about funding that, especially as a woman in such a male-dominated world.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Firstly, congratulations for your wonderful, remarkable achievements and being with us here today. And I think of course, FIA does many work, and that is why we are here to share all the work that we are doing. On financial aspect, we have two different kinds of models. One model is on the training and capacity building and education and awareness. And that's where the FIA has scholarships. So we have our partnership with United Against Online Abuse with the Dublin City University, where we offer 5 scholarships. We have Advanced Motorsport Engineering Scholarship that also gives the opportunity of full funded education for everyone who takes passion in this and wants to go further. So the scholarship is a wonderful subsidizing opportunity to really bring out the underrepresented or financially marginalized population. But also, one area that FIA is working very hard, one narrative that we are trying to change, is that motorsport is a sport for all. It is not about money, social privilege, the color of your skin, or the color of your passport. Because no matter where you come from, your dreams are valid. And if I could be here, I think that is one of the greatest testament that this organization really walks the talk. Now, when it comes to having the affordability to motorsport, we are developing local solutions like affordable cross cars. And we have seen public policy changes like countries like Seychelles, where the government has exempted tax on all karting equipments, which has wonderfully helped the community to grow up. So we are, at the same time, while working through our subsidized programs such as Girls on Track or Career Shift program, where we provide the guidance and opportunity, and also the mentorship program that I shared about, there is so much more FIA is doing at a public policy level, and subsidized engagement in many of these motorsport opportunities and beyond, also at the mobility spaces. And I could go on and on, but being very mindful of the time, I would be very interested to engage later on, and our colleagues are also there, 2 other colleagues from the FIA, so we welcome you to have a chat after the panel. Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the front. Yep. Why don't you come and nick back this one?
So thank you. As an investor in sports tech, fintech, AI, medtech, and climate tech, and also as a former elite athlete, chairman of the football club, the father, actually 3 kids, on an England player pathway, we as a family have been mental health campaigners. So during the COVID, my daughter, actually also named Farah, started her own campaign as a Nike ambassador to promote mental health and physical fitness during her COVID times on her Instagram page, which engaged kids all over the country to actually be more active. Now, as somebody who's been involved in data space and been promoting athlete first and fans first, data and AI have been hugely important in the last few years and coming up in the coming years to help this inequality when it comes down to the support of athletes around the world from all sorts of backgrounds. So we talked about a privileged background, there's issues with that, but also underprivileged background and all the stuff that we're doing around the world. So the question to the panel is how do we address this inequality? How do we use the power of technology and AI in particular to narrow that gap, and what's your kind of prediction in relation to the formula?
Yeah, it's a big question. We have an entire work stream against AI and against leveraging the power of technology. Our data providers and our stats providers and our electric line calling and our level 1, level 2, and level 3 data are some of our most valuable revenue streams. And so there's no question that it is incredibly important to think about data and technology and how that will help achieve equality, because there is just a tremendous amount of value there. So there's a lot of money. So when you're talking about creating equality, you're looking for where the pathways are to find some of the largest spenders in sport. And so we have found a lot of success already in that space. And then, as I say, we're doing an entire kind of audit currently, a technology audit, looking at everything we do across the business and then across all of our tournaments, which for us is where it gets really complicated because we don't own our tournaments, but that's a conversation for another day. So how you kind of leverage the power of all of our tournaments, all of our data, all of the game data, and then everything else that sits behind that so that we can leverage that sort of for the highest insights, but then ultimately the highest value as well. It's complex, and AI means so many things now. You know, you say AI, and people have very strong reactions to that. But AI is everything from, you know, Hawkeye in tennis to kind of like leveraging personal data, which also then becomes complicated because you're talking about individual athletes. And so where are those lines, which is something that I think we have to make sure we're always putting the athlete first. You're always putting sort of thinking about the power of the athlete and the personal data privacy of the athletes as well. So all of that to say, I don't know that it's a very clean answer. I would tell you that it's something that we talk about a lot, that we've already invested quite a bit in, and it's something that we continue to look at for the future.
Thank you. Right, we are over time, and I can see Tara and Laura looking menacingly at me at the back. So I'll just read my script and not do eye contact. We've already seen today how sport can be more than just a game. It's a space for healing, empowerment, community, and long-term change. I'd like to thank our amazing panelists, Faiza, Sarah, Yvonne, and Nasser, for sharing not just your insights, but your impact. And thank you all for being part of this incredible conversation. You've got an amazing agenda for the rest of the day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and it's been a real privilege to be part of it. So thank you very much.